What? This is Tara with Love Prevails again. We had a little bit of an internet issue, but hopefully we got it fixed. And so we do have two videos, one of them introducing Love Prevails as well as my friend Will. And Will was talking to us about his childhood and about how he did the painkillers for a long time. He also mentioned that you were, had done the enough heroin that it should have killed you, and that you went for many years and never tried to stop, and you finally realized you needed to stop. You called your mom and asked your mom to come get you because you needed a ride to rehab. Was that a good recap?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Good summary.
Yes. So now that we've got it hooked up to internet, would love for you to continue.
Yeah.
I want to make sure it looks like we are on and everything should be good. You know what? We haven't done a live video in a long time, and if everything goes perfectly, then it just is not as exciting.
It wouldn't have been as cool. Exactly.
It's not as exciting. So go ahead and keep telling us because I'm really enjoying hearing your story.
So, for me, that was, I'd never had a rehab. I'd never done anything like that, and that experience really showed me that, there was some sort of light, hope at the end of this tunnel. And, I got on a plane, I came out here, and I moved into Carla Vista, the sober living that I operate today. And, at the time, it was the most terrifying experience I've ever probably had.
Going to rehab?
All of it, the whole thing. Sobriety, I didn't want that. That wasn't a choice that I was like, I went to rehab because I was sick of dealing with the consequences of my own actions. Mm-hmm. And that's the reality of it.
Right.
And I had every intention of getting out of rehab, probably doing the bare minimum to get some people off my back, and then going right back to living the same life. But something changed. And, I was in so much pain going in there that I didn't realize how deep down the hole I had gone, and then being able to come out here and being able to be in a community that was sober, and having the family support that I did back home and whatnot, having that house of guys that at the time, looking back on it, it was almost like college. You know what I mean? Like your first experience, you're living in dorms. Now, granted, we're not all 18, 19 years old. I think the oldest guy we had was 72 at the time. And maybe a couple that were younger than me. And just having that support, that's when I started to see changes.
Yeah.
I started to see the difference in myself. I started to realize that, there were a lot of things that I was hiding from. Yeah. Personally, that had happened to me, like we had talked about before, when we were victims. We were victims, and I was angry at the entire world. Mm-hmm. And I just, I was very fortunate to find a sponsor very early on that, took me through the steps, and still to this day is one of the men I lean on. Yeah. And then fast forward a little bit of time, and I instead of being the one early in sobriety, I was given the opportunity to run the sober living houses that I lived in. Mm-hmm. And today I still do that, and it's a beautiful gift for me to have the opportunity to give to others what was given to me.
Right.
And that is my entire philosophy when it comes to the sober livings, is every individual that comes in, that they have the same chance that I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mentioned that you still lean on the same sponsor, and I got super lucky with my sponsor. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that go through multiple sponsors. Mm-hmm. And I've had sponsees that have gone through multiple sponsors and continue to find other sponsors. Yeah. And I got very, very fortunate, and I can guarantee you, when I first started meeting with her, I did not care I had no interest in what she had to say.
Yep.
I just was at a point where I was just like, whatever, we're doing this. But I didn't know her enough to really respect what she had to say.
Yep.
I had to come to that. I think it probably took her a solid year to be able. She dealt with me. Yeah. She literally put up with me.
And mine did as well. And I think, you know, it was.
Oh, it's somebody must have put their hands up. This is just. We're learning all sorts of new stuff here.
For me, it was what I knew was the way that man carried himself through the world. That interested me. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily what he had to say, but it was the way he moved through the world. And that's what interested me. And then, you know, to this day, he is the most loving, compassionate human I've ever come across, but also the biggest hard ass that has ever, you know, and I needed both. Yeah. I needed the love and I needed the sternness and I needed, you know, somebody that understood exactly what I was going through. Right. And there was never something that I said that I then felt ashamed of saying or something that I had done. Like every time I was terrified to say something and I said it, his response every time was, "I love you." Yeah. You know, and I couldn't wrap my head around that in the moment. Right. You know, today I do. You know, today I carry a lot of that same mentality into, you know, the work that I do. And you know, we all say, well, we don't all say it. We all want to act like we're entirely free of judgment and free of, you know, bias and animosity and all of those things, but we're also human. Yeah. We think every one of those things, you know, whether we verbalize them or not. So, you know, my goal is just to simply see everything for what it is. Right. And everybody deserves a chance. Yeah. You know?
I love that. So something that we talked about a little bit prior to going live, you're still a bartender. Yeah. And I think that is super interesting because you got sober, you're around alcohol all the time.
I am. Yep.
It's on your hands. Yeah. How was that hard? Tell me how you handled that.
It never was. I think, you know, truthfully, I think we all get to that point where, you know, we've suffered enough. I never had the craving. I never had the thought. I know exactly what happens. I've run that, you know, through the ringer 1,000 times. I don't question anymore whether I can sit and have a drink. I know that I cannot. And I think, you know, there were a couple times. I remember one day stressful, you know, bartending, it is what it is. And we were getting our butts whipped and I got some whiskey on my hands and it, you know, made it to my nose. And one of the regulars, he saw me because I was just like taking that big whiff and he was like, "Are you all right, man?" I was like, "Hey, thanks for noticing." You know what I mean? Like, maybe I wasn't about to be. I don't know, you know? I know. But other than that, you know, that one singular moment, I've really never, I know it happens. Right. And I think, you know, I'm proud today of what I have. I love what I do and I love, you know, the life that I live. And I just, the big book talks about the obsession is removed. And I think that's the perfect explanation. I don't, you know, bartending is a job to me. It's a means to make a living. It's not a, you know, social aspect like it used to be, if that makes sense.
Even in the beginning, it wasn't hard?
It wasn't.
You just were ready.
I was ready.
So I have another question about that. Do your regulars ever talk to you about sobriety, and do you ever invite them to you to meetings and stuff? Do they come?
I can't say that I've ever had a regular come to a meeting, but I have had many, many people that have asked questions, that have inquired, I've gone out to lunch, we've done all of that stuff. There's always, you know, in that line of work, there's probably always a couple people that you're working with in that regard, you know, and it's, I think, again, kind of like I said about my sponsor, you get to a point where you carry yourself and you move through the world differently than you used to. And that attracts, I don't know, maybe attracts isn't the word, that promotes exactly what it is that we're doing. You know what I mean? And that people are curious.
Yeah.
You know, well, I just saw this horrible thing happen to you, and you didn't fly off the handles. You know, how did you do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people ask those questions, and I'm like, well,
wasn't easy.
I have this thing. It's a program. You know, I have spirituality. I have, you know, it wasn't easy. You're right. Never, ever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of days that I, you know, in sobriety, I have prayed at night to not wake up in the morning. Yeah. I've prayed to God you know, I think maybe I'm too much of a coward to do it myself today, which is probably a good thing, right?
I don't think that's being a coward. I think deep down inside, you know, it's not the right decision.
Yeah. I think, you know, we're warriors, we're fighters, and ultimately, you know, I did. There was a lot of time that I prayed to God not to wake me up in the morning. And, you know, we go through our waves, and he did. Every morning, he woke me up.
As a suicide survivor,
yeah,
I would say taking your life as the coward.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that today. You know, I would agree with that statement today. You know, and I look back on a lot of it, and ultimately, God's plan is God's plan, and I've questioned it long enough that, you know, that's gotten me nowhere. I just trust that, you know, his process is what it's going to be. Old Chicago, the restaurant that I'd been at for 7 years, closed down on St. Patrick's Day.
They closed.
No warning.
The worst day.
Yeah.
The biggest
the
moneymaker of the year.
alcoholic day of the year. Yeah.
I heard about that. That was the craziest thing.
And that was, you know, truly half of my income. And of course, instantly now you're worried. How do I pay the bills? What do I do? You know, and I was talking to my family about it, and they were like, you are so calm. And I said, you know how long I have stressed financially for no reason? I have never not had what I've needed. You know, and does that mean I have what I want? No, it does not. It absolutely does not. But I have had a roof over my head, and I have had food in my belly,
right.
And I have had my dogs, and they have had food in their bellies. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I trust that those things are going to continue to, you know, happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I go through that sometimes too. Why me? Why me?
I think we all do. You know, I think it's, again, we're human. We want to be these spiritual fit gurus, but we're human. We're angry sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, this last month has been my season of, what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah.
When is it my freaking turn?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask my sponsor.
Yeah.
She told me.
Again, I was
probably should do some work.
Yeah, I was just talking to my family, and I just, how many times over the years have you stressed out about something that now you look back and you're like, wow, so minor, and I was ready to take a drink, or I was ready to harm somebody, or I was ready to, you know what I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
And now you're like, what was the point, you know? And I just, I've gotten to a point that I believe in what I do, and I believe in who I am, and I believe that, you know, everything, universe, karma, whatever, you know, words you want to use, all is going to be okay.
Yeah. In time, and the bad things that happen now are blips on the radar of life. Whereas before, bad things were happening would last for years.
Yeah.
They're not any easier to handle.
Yeah.
But they're smaller blips on the radar.
I have a friend who, not in the program at all, has no need to be, just a normal guy. Family man, you know, I've been close with him for years out here, and not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I was going through a crisis and, you know, pretty devastated, and I was talking to him about it, and, you know, the thing that he told me, and this has always stuck with me, he said, you know, ask God to broaden your shoulders a little bit, because what you do, who you are as a person, you're constantly going to be around pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason you are here. He was like, that stuff's not going to go away. Life is going to continue to happen. Bad things are going to continue to happen. But if you ask God in that moment to make your shoulders just a little bit broader so you can carry that pain just a little bit more, you know.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy, but every single time something happens in my life, that's my prayer now. God, just make them a little broader for a little bit longer.
Right.
You know?
So I'm curious, did you find a new job?
I did.
Good.
Yep. So I have a buddy who works downtown. He owns his own bar. Not a consistent schedule, but has been a very good friend of mine for a long time. So, you know, he is doing what he can, you know, as I need it. So,
good.
Again, I think building relationships, you know, it just happened that way. And he was like, you know, the last 2 weeks I've had 3 nights a week, and you know, I'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why stay? Why stay sober? What? Because it's a big commitment.
Yeah. The selfish answer, I don't want to give any of my stuff up now. I like the things I have. You know, the truth of it.
And you say that because, you know, because with not being sober comes losing jobs,
I'm not taking
losing
care of
cars.
these plants.
Yeah.
They're all gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, I'm losing the car that I worked so hard for, that I love. My dogs don't stay, you know.
Yeah.
But truthfully, you know, why stay sober? Because it's better. Mm-hmm. Truthfully. The honest answer is because it's better.
Right. Because
today, my life is so much better than the best day I had using.
I know. Yeah. I've said that too. And here recently, I've had some bad days over the last several months.
Yeah. Really
bad days.
Mm-hmm.
But my worst day now is still better than my best day then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned your dogs. Mm-hmm. I didn't take care of my dogs for like 2 years.
Yeah.
I didn't even take the poor things out.
Yeah.
When I finally did get things, my life together and on track, I had to replace all my floors.
Yeah. I mean, I have rescued pitties since I was 19 years old. My parents started rescuing pitties. Like, it's now a thing, right? I just, in September, was able to rescue a Cane Corso, so an Italian Mastiff, which is a massive, massive dog. Mm-hmm. Gentlest giant in the whole world. And he has, you know, a little bit of a special place for me, and you know, without going into a ton of details, he was born the same month my daughter was supposed to be born. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was one of those things of, you know, this is her way of saying I'm still here.
Wow, that gave me chills.
Yeah. That
gave me
and
chills.
And he was not supposed to be around. I wasn't looking for him. He just came one day.
I still have chills. Look at this.
Yeah.
That literally gave me chills. And we certainly don't have to talk about that if you don't want. But that, wow. That's really special.
And again, it's God's plan, you know, without getting emotional. The hardest thing I've ever had to go through.
I can't even imagine.
Truthfully.
Yeah.
And it still hurts every single day. But there's those little things that you know are kind of those signs of, again, it's all gonna be okay. You know. So yeah.
That's a big loss.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I'm really grateful that you came and allowed me to interview you, and that you know, there are a lot of people out there that can really relate to what you shared today, and a lot of people have a lot of loss. You know, your
Mm-hmm.
loss is different than my loss, but loss is painful.
Yeah.
Really, really painful.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you sharing that.
We only get through this all together.
Yeah.
You know, that's the beauty of recovery. When you choose to walk down this road, you no longer have to be alone.
So do you mind if I ask you, because that is such a big loss, you know, I mean, what kept you sober through that? Especially being around alcohol all the time.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's
Honestly,
a very honest answer.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I know I'm unwilling to go back down the roads I've gone down. And, you know, that was that time when there were a lot of nights that I prayed, God, I don't need to wake up tomorrow. I'm okay. Yeah. You know, and obviously that didn't happen. So, you know, what kept me sober? I truly, probably God. Probably.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I never thought about using. I know that. You know, it wasn't something, again, that crossed my mind. It was, you know, so much pain to experience, but still being able to be involved in the work that I do, right? And giving back to, you know, others and being able to be there for others. I think a lot of it, I don't want to say it lessened the hurt, but it at least gave me purpose. You know, I am the best version of myself when I am fighting for something. Yeah. I've learned that. So, you know, I remember I was working for Hornbuckle Foundation at the time, and I was talking with Sarah Hornbuckle, and I said, give me a war to fight. Give me one. I need one. And she had asked me, she said, do you honestly think that you're ready right now? You know, and that was kind of that pause of like, am I ready to take on another battle?
Right.
You know? So.
And then the battle comes and you're like, no. Yeah. No, I'm not ready.
Yeah. But now I'm in it.
Yeah.
You know? It is being in the recovery community, being somebody who has a purpose in the recovery community. You know, we're leaders. Mm-hmm. We have an obligation and a duty to walk life a certain way, right, to show others that it's possible, you know? So yeah, maybe I got lucky in that, you know, I was running sober livings and I had a lot of people that were looking up to me at the time, and maybe that's why I stayed sober, right, you know, to show somebody else that it was possible. Yeah. You know? I don't know.
And maybe somebody that's watching this video today is going to be very inspired by your story. Yeah. And now, if you or somebody you love is struggling with addiction, mental health, please reach out to me. I'd love an opportunity to talk to you. Thank you so much, Will. We have the Facebook up and running. Please, the link is in the post above the video. Please like, share, comment. Subscribe to the Facebook post every Monday at 3:30. We'll continue doing these videos. All of you moms out there, or anybody really, what did you do for Mother's Day? Please drop a message. Let me know what you did for Mother's Day. What amazing things that you got to experience this year. Your best life is waiting for you. Please reach out to me. We're going to find it together. Remember, this is part B. There's a part A to this video because we had some technical issues. But it keeps it real.
It's got to be, right?
Right. Yeah. And
we're raw in our lives. We might as well be raw in our technical difficulties as well.
It is what it is. And so I welcome it.
Thank you.
But thank you again, and I hope everybody has a tremendous week, and I'm loving the warm weather and can't wait to see all the flowers, and it's so green and beautiful with the rain, and so everybody enjoy being outside and get some of that good old vitamin D. All right.
Thank you all.